The wind howled across the frozen plains of Velkaris like a wounded beast. The small moon orbited a gas giant, and its surface stayed locked in eternal twilight. Ice covered everything. Sharp crystals grew from the ground like frozen flowers. The air was so cold it could freeze breath before it left the mouth. The Draconid pack flew through the purple sky. Their massive wings beat against the thin atmosphere. Scales of deep blue and silver reflected the dim light from the distant sun. There were 20 dragons in the group. They had been hunting for food in the warmer valleys to the south. Now they returned home to their nesting grounds. Silvara led the pack. She was the eldest and wisest among them. Her scales had turned almost white with age. Scars marked her body from countless battles and storms. She had lived for 300 cycles of this small moon. Her eyes were sharp and golden. Nothing escaped her notice. The nesting grounds came into view. It was a series of caves carved into a massive cliff face. The caves stayed warmer than the outside because heat rose from deep within the moon. The Draconids had used these caves for thousands of years. Generations of hatchlings had been born here. Something felt wrong. Silvara sensed it first. Her wings faltered for a moment. The other dragons noticed her concern. They slowed their flight. Their eyes scanned the cliff face ahead. Everything looked normal from a distance. The ice formation still sparkled. The cave entrances were dark and quiet, but there was no movement. Young hatchlings always watched for their parents' return. They would cry out in excitement. Their small wings would flutter as they tried to fly. The sound of their calls usually filled the air long before the adults landed. Today there was only silence. The pack landed on the wide ledge in front of the main cave. Their claws scraped against ice and stone. Silvara moved forward first. Her heart beat faster. She entered the cave that served as the main nursery. Inside, the temperature was warmer. Glowing moss covered the walls and provided soft light. Beds of dried grass and shed scales made comfortable nests. Adult dragons who had stayed behind to guard the young ones looked up with worried faces. "Where are the hatchlings?" Silvara asked. Her voice was deep and rumbling. One of the guardians, a younger male named Tai Sung, stepped forward. His head hung low. "3 are missing, matriarch. We searched everywhere. They vanished during the night storm." Silvara's eyes widened. Her tail lashed back and forth. How? How could 3 hatchlings disappear? Tai Sung explained what happened. A terrible storm had struck during the darkest part of the night cycle. The wind had been stronger than usual. Ice and snow had blown into the caves. The guardians had worked to keep all the young ones safe and warm. In the chaos and darkness, they had not noticed 3 of the smallest hatchlings were gone until morning came. The missing hatchlings were siblings. They had hatched only 40 days ago. Their scales were still soft. They could barely fly. Their names were Bora, Dal, and Hanul. They were curious and playful. They often wandered away from their nest to explore. Silvara felt fear grip her heart. Fear was not something she experienced often. She had faced ice storms, predators, and starvation. But losing hatchlings was different. They were the future of the pack. Each one was precious beyond measure. "Organize search parties," she commanded. Her voice was firm despite her fear. "Check every cave. Search every crevice. Look in the ice fields. They cannot have gone far." The dragons split into groups. They searched for hours. They called out the hatchlings' names. Their voices echoed across the frozen landscape. They flew in wide circles around the nesting grounds. They checked places where hatchlings might hide or become trapped. Nothing. As the search continued, a dark thought entered Silvara's mind. The humans. They had arrived on Velkaris 6 moon cycles ago. They built a research station on the other side of the mountain range. The Draconids had watched from a distance. The humans seemed harmless at first. They stayed in their metal structures. They sent small flying machines to study the weather and ice. But who knew what humans really wanted? Silvara had heard stories from other dragon packs across the galaxy. Humans were strange creatures. Some were kind. Some were cruel. Some collected rare animals like treasures. Some performed experiments on living beings. Some killed for sport. What if the humans had taken the hatchlings? The idea made Silvara's blood burn hot. Her protective instincts roared to life. She would destroy anyone who harmed the young ones. She would tear apart their metal buildings. She would make them regret ever coming to this moon. But she needed proof first. She called the pack together. The dragons gathered on the wide ledge. Their breath created clouds of mist in the cold air. Their expressions were worried and angry. They all knew the hatchlings might be in danger. We must consider all possibilities, Silvera said. The humans have been watching us. They may have taken Bora, Dal, and Hanul. We need to investigate their settlement. Some dragons growled in agreement. Others looked uncertain. Taesung spoke up. What if we are wrong, matriarch? What if we attack innocent beings? Then we will know they are innocent, Silvara replied. But if they have our young ones, we will take them back. By force if necessary. The pack prepared to fly toward the human research station, but Silvara decided they should wait until first light. The sun would rise in a few hours. The light would make it easier to see. It would also make their approach more visible. If the humans were guilty, Silvara wanted them to see the pack coming. She wanted them to know the fury they had awakened. The dragons settled down to wait. They spoke in low voices. Some cleaned their scales nervously. Others sharpened their claws on rocks. All of them thought about the missing hatchlings. Were they cold? Were they scared? Were they still alive? Silvara stood at the edge of the cliff. She looked toward the mountains where the human settlement lay beyond. Her golden eyes reflected the dim starlight. She made a silent promise to Bora, Dal, and Hanul. She would find them. No matter what it took. No matter who stood in her way. The long night slowly passed. The darkness seemed to last forever. Each minute felt like an hour. The dragons could barely contain their anxiety and anger. Finally, the sky began to change. Purple darkness shifted to deep blue. Then hints of orange and pink appeared on the horizon. The distant sun started its slow climb. First light had arrived. It is time, Silvara announced. We fly to the human settlement. We will find our hatchlings. The pack took to the sky. 20 dragons flew in formation. Their wings blocked out the rising sun. Their shadows swept across the frozen ground below. They looked like an approaching storm. Dark and powerful and unstoppable. They had no idea what they would find when they arrived. Daeho woke slowly to the sound of rumbling thunder. His eyes felt heavy. His body was warm and comfortable. He did not want to move. Sleep still pulled at his mind. The thunder grew louder. It sounded strange. Not like normal thunder, more like the beating of giant drums. He forced his eyes open. The small shelter around him was dim. Only emergency lights glowed softly in the corners. His thermal sleeping bag wrapped around him like a cocoon. Something moved against his chest. Something warm and breathing. Daeho looked down. His heart nearly stopped. 3 small creatures were nestled against him. They were the size of large cats. Their scales shimmered in colors of blue and silver. Small wings were folded against their bodies. They made soft purring sounds as they slept. Their tiny claws gripped his thermal suit gently. Dragon hatchlings. The memory came back to him in a rush. Last night. The terrible storm. He had been checking the weather monitoring equipment outside the shelter. The wind had been brutal. Ice particles flew through the air like tiny knives. He could barely see through his helmet visor. Then he heard crying. Small, desperate sounds, almost like kittens mewing. He followed the sounds and found 3 tiny dragons huddled behind an ice formation. They were shaking violently. Their scales were covered in frost. They looked half dead from the cold. Daeho knew about the dragon colony. The research station had warned all personnel to avoid them. Dragons were dangerous. They were territorial and protective. Do not approach. Do not interfere. Observe from a distance only. But these were babies. They were dying. Daeho had not thought about rules or safety. He scooped up all 3 hatchlings and ran back to his shelter. Inside, he activated the emergency heater. He stripped off his outer thermal suit and held the hatchlings against his body. His own warmth and the shelter's heat slowly brought them back to life. They had stopped shaking. They ate some of his protein bars. Then they curled up against him and fell asleep. Exhausted from his long day and the rescue, Daeho had also fallen asleep. Now morning had come, and the thunder outside was getting louder. Daeho carefully sat up. The hatchlings stirred but did not wake. He moved to the small window and looked outside. His blood turned to ice dragons everywhere. At least 20 massive adult dragons surrounded his shelter. They were landing on the ice field around his building. Each one was enormous. Their bodies were the size of trucks. Their wings spread wide enough to cover his entire shelter. Scales caught the morning light and glowed like jewels. And they looked angry. Their eyes were fixed on his shelter. Their tails lashed back and forth. Some showed their teeth. Others dug their claws into the ice. The largest dragon, an ancient female with white scales, stepped forward. She was clearly the leader. Her golden eyes bore into the shelter like lasers. Daeho's hands shook. He was going to die. The dragons thought he had stolen their young ones. They would tear his shelter apart. They would tear him apart. He had broken the most important rule. He had interfered with the dragons, but what choice did he have? Let the babies freeze to death? One of the hatchlings woke up. The small creature yawned, showing tiny teeth. It looked at Daeho and chirped happily. Then it noticed the window. It saw the adult dragons outside. The hatchling's eyes grew wide. It cried out in excitement. The sound carried through the shelter walls. All the adult dragons heard it. Their heads snapped toward the building. The white-scaled leader roared. The sound shook the entire shelter. Equipment rattled on the walls. Daeho fell to his knees and covered his ears. The other two hatchlings woke up. They also saw the dragons outside. They began crying out and flapping their small wings. They wanted to go to the adults. They scrambled toward the door. Daeho knew what he had to do. He could not keep the hatchlings trapped inside. The adult dragons would destroy the shelter to get to them. If he wanted any chance of surviving, he needed to return the babies. His hands trembled as he opened the inner airlock door. Cold air rushed in. The hatchlings tumbled forward. They could not move fast on their small legs. They fell over each other in their excitement. Daeho activated the outer door. It slid open slowly. Freezing wind blasted into the shelter. The hatchlings rushed outside into the snow. They called out to the adult dragons. Their tiny voices were high and happy. Daeho stepped outside behind them. He wore only his indoor clothes and his thermal suit. The cold hit him like a wall. He raised his hand slowly. He wanted to show he meant no harm. He was not a threat. The white-scaled leader approached. Each step she took made the ground shake. Her head was massive. Her teeth were longer than Daeho's arms. Her breath created clouds of steam. She could swallow him whole without effort. The three hatchlings ran to her. They climbed over her feet and legs. They chirped and purred. They seemed happy and healthy. The leader lowered her huge head and sniffed them carefully. She checked each one for injuries. Her golden eyes examined every scale. The hatchlings were fine. Better than fine. They were warm and fed and energetic. The leader slowly raised her head. She looked at Daeho. Her eyes were intelligent. So much intelligence lived behind those golden orbs. She was not just an animal. She was a thinking, feeling being. She was a person. Daeho swallowed hard. He pointed to the hatchlings. Then he pointed toward the direction of the dragon colony. He made gestures to show finding them. He tried to show they were cold. He hugged himself and shivered to demonstrate. The leader watched every movement. She tilted her head slightly. She seemed to be thinking. Understanding began to show in her eyes. One of the hatchlings, the smallest one with silver scales, climbed back toward Daeho. It grabbed his leg with its tiny claws. It looked up at him and made soft sounds. Then it looked at the leader and chirped loudly. The other hatchlings joined in. They seemed to be explaining something to the adults. Their small voices talked over each other. They gestured with their wings and tails. The adult dragons listened. Some of their aggressive postures relaxed. They looked confused now instead of angry. They looked at Daeho with different eyes. Other dragons approached. They sniffed the hatchlings. They examined Daeho from a distance. One younger male dragon stepped closer. He was smaller than the leader but still massive. He looked at Daeho with curiosity instead of rage. The silver-scaled hatchling would not leave Daeho's side. It kept climbing on him. Its siblings also returned to him. They acted like he was their parent. They purred when he touched them. They rubbed their small heads against his hands. The leader dragon made a decision. She moved closer to Daeho. He tried not to run. Every instinct screamed at him to flee. But running would be useless. Dragons could fly. They were faster than anything on this moon. The leader lowered her massive head until it was level with Daeho's face. She was so close he could see himself reflected in her golden eye. He could smell her breath. It was warm and carried the scent of meat and ice. She sniffed him. Her nostrils were bigger than his head. He stood perfectly still. His heart hammered in his chest. This was it. She was deciding whether to kill him or spare him. The hatchlings climbed onto Daeho's shoulders and head. They chirped at the leader. They seemed to be vouching for him, protecting him just as he had protected them. The leader pulled back slowly. She made a low rumbling sound. It was not aggressive. It sounded almost like humming. The other dragons relaxed further. Some sat down on the ice. Others folded their wings. The tension in the air changed. The threat of violence faded. Something else replaced it. Understanding, recognition, the beginning of respect. The leader looked at her pack. She made several sounds. The dragons responded with their own calls. It was clearly communication, a language that Deho could not understand, but he understood the meaning well enough. The dragons knew the truth now. He had not stolen the hatchlings. He had saved them. He had risked his own safety to keep them warm and alive. He had given them food and shelter. One of the adult dragons, a female with deep blue scales, approached. She gently picked up one of the hatchlings with her mouth. The baby did not protest. Another dragon collected the second hatchling, but the smallest one, the silver-scaled baby, refused to leave Deho. It clung to his thermal suit. It cried when the adults tried to take it. It wrapped its tail around Deho's arm. The leader watched this with interest. She made a soft sound. The silver hatchling looked at her but still did not let go of Deho. Deho gently tried to remove the small dragon. "You need to go with your family," he said softly. His voice was hoarse from fear and cold. "You belong with them, not with me." The hatchling looked at him with bright blue eyes. It made a sad sound, but it slowly released its grip. Deho set it down on the ice. The leader picked it up carefully in her jaws. The three hatchlings were reunited with their pack. The dragons prepared to leave. But before they took off, the leader looked back at Deho one more time. Their eyes met across the frozen landscape. Something passed between them in that moment. A connection. An understanding that went beyond species, beyond language. Then the dragons launched into the sky. Their wings beat against the cold air. They flew toward their mountain home. Deho watched until they disappeared beyond the peaks. He stood alone on the ice field. His body shook from cold and adrenaline. He had survived an encounter with wild dragons. He had returned their young ones. He had made contact with another intelligent species, and somehow he felt that this way. 3 days passed after the encounter. Deho tried to return to his normal routine. He checked the weather monitoring equipment. He recorded data. He sent reports back to the main research station. But his mind kept returning to the dragons, to the hatchlings, to the moment when the leader had looked into his eyes. He could not forget them. The research station contacted him on the second day. They had detected the dragon swarm on their sensors. They wanted to know what happened. Deho told them everything. There was a long silence on the other end of the communication line. Then his supervisor, a woman named Dr. Park, spoke carefully. "You broke protocol, Deho. You interfered with the native wildlife. You could have been killed. You could have started a war between humans and dragons. They were dying," Deho said simply. "I could not let them die." Another long silence. Then Dr. Park sighed. "I understand. I might have done the same thing. But please, no more contact with the dragons. Let them live their lives." "We observe only. That is our mission," Deho agreed. But he felt hollow inside. Something important had happened on that frozen morning. Something that should not be ignored or forgotten. On the 4th day, the dragons came back. Deho was outside repairing a sensor array when he heard the familiar sound of wings. He looked up. His heart jumped. 5 dragons flew toward his shelter. The white-scaled leader was among them. So was the younger male who had approached him with curiosity. And clutching the leader's back were 3 small shapes, the hatchlings. The dragons landed near his shelter. Deho stood frozen with his repair tools in hand. He did not know what to do. Should he run inside? Should he stay still? Should he try to communicate? The leader lowered herself to the ground. The 3 hatchlings climbed down her back. They immediately ran toward Deho. Their little legs moved as fast as they could through the snow. They cried out happily when they reached him. The silver-scaled one arrived first. It climbed up Deho's leg and onto his shoulder. It rubbed its small head against his face. The other 2 circled his feet and made purring sounds. Deho could not help but smile. They remembered him. They were happy to see him. He gently petted their smooth scales. They were warmer than before, healthier, well-fed and well-cared for. The leader watched this interaction. She made a low sound, not aggressive, almost approving. Then she did something unexpected. She pushed a large bundle across the ice toward Daeho. He looked at it carefully. The bundle was made from woven plant fibers. Inside were pieces of meat, freshly killed and still warm. It was an offering. A gift, Daeho understood. This was their way of saying thank you. The dragons were bringing him food in return for saving their young ones. It was a gesture of gratitude and respect. He bowed deeply. He had read that many species across the galaxy understood bowing as a sign of respect. The leader tilted her head. Then she slowly lowered her own head in what looked like a bow in return. The younger male dragon approached. He was less cautious than the others. He came close enough that Daeho could touch him. The dragon's scales were smooth and warm. They felt like polished stone. The dragon closed his eyes and made a rumbling sound that might have been pleasure. Daeho realized something important. These creatures were not mindless beasts. They had emotions. They had social structures. They could feel gratitude and kindness. They were people, just in a different form. For the next hour, Daeho sat with the dragons. The hatchlings played around him. They chased each other and tumbled in the snow. The adults watched carefully. They seemed relaxed. At ease, Daeho tried to communicate. He pointed at himself. Daeho, he said clearly. He repeated it several times while touching his chest. The leader watched with interest. She made a sound. It was complex and musical, far too complicated for human vocal cords to reproduce. But it was clearly her name. Daeho tried to copy it. He failed completely. The sound that came from his mouth was nothing like the dragon's voice. The younger male dragon made a sound that might have been laughter, but the leader seemed to appreciate the effort. She tried something else. She made a simpler sound, just 2 syllables. Silva. Daeho could work with that. Silva, he repeated. He pointed at her. Silva. The dragon's eyes brightened. She nodded her massive head. Communication was happening. Basic and simple, but real. The younger male approached. He made his own simplified sound. Tae-sung. Tae-sung, Daeho repeated with a smile. He was learning their names. They were learning his name. This was incredible. The silver-scaled hatchling on his shoulder chirped loudly. It seemed to want attention. Daeho gently touched its small head. And what is your name, little one? Silva made a soft, gentle sound. Hanul, Hanul, Daeho said. The small dragon purred happily. The other 2 hatchlings pushed forward. They wanted their names said too. Bora, Silva said, indicating the one with the bluest scales. Dal, she said, indicating the one with the brightest silver markings. Daeho repeated each name carefully. The hatchlings responded with happy sounds. They recognized their names in his voice. This peaceful moment was interrupted by a sound from Daeho's shelter. His communication system was beeping. Someone was trying to contact him. He needed to answer or the main station would send someone to check on him. He gestured to the dragons that he needed to go inside. They seemed to understand. The hatchlings reluctantly climbed down from him. Silva made a sound that seemed like agreement. Daeho hurried inside. He activated the communication system. His colleague Jiwoo's face appeared on the screen. She looked worried. Daeho, are you okay? I saw something strange on the satellite feed. It looked like dragons near your location. Daeho glanced at the window. The dragons were clearly visible outside. He made a decision. Jiwoo, I need you to come here. Bring your recording equipment. And come alone. I will explain everything when you arrive. Jiwoo's eyes widened. What is happening? Something important. Something that could change everything between humans and dragons. But I need you to trust me. Come alone and move slowly. Can you do that? Jiwoo hesitated. Then she nodded. I will be there in 2 hours. I am bringing my vehicle now. The communication ended. Daeho went back outside. The dragons were still there. They had not left. Silva looked at him with a question in her eyes. Daeho made gestures. He tried to show that another human was coming. One person, a friend. He pointed to himself and then gestured to indicate another person. He made peaceful gestures with his hands. Silva watched carefully. She seemed to understand. She made sounds to the other dragons. They shifted positions but did not leave. They would wait. 2 hours felt like forever. Daeho sat on a storage container outside his shelter. The hatchlings played nearby. The adult dragons rested on the ice. Occasionally, Tae-sung would approach and allow Daeho to touch his scales. The dragon seemed fascinated by human hands. Finally, a vehicle appeared in the distance. It moved slowly across the ice field. The dragons noticed immediately. They stood up. Their posture became alert but not aggressive. They watched the approaching vehicle carefully. Jiwoo stopped the vehicle far away. She clearly saw the dragons. Daeho could imagine her fear, but she was brave. She slowly opened the door and stepped out. She carried her recording equipment but kept her hands visible. Daeho walked toward her. He moved slowly and calmly. The hatchlings followed him like small pets. This seemed to confuse Jiwoo even more. "What is happening?" she asked in Korean. Her voice shook slightly. "I saved 3 of their hatchlings from freezing to death," Daeho explained. "They came to thank me. They brought gifts. They have been peaceful. I think we can communicate with them, Jiwoo. I think they want to communicate with us." Jiwoo looked at the massive dragons. Then she looked at the small hatchlings playing around Daeho's feet. Understanding slowly appeared in her eyes. "This is incredible. This is first contact. Real first contact. Yes, and I want you to document everything. But we must move slowly. We must show respect. Can you do that?" Jiwoo nodded. She activated her recording equipment. The camera started capturing everything. She and Daeho slowly walked toward the dragons together. Silva watched them approach. Her golden eyes studied Jiwoo carefully. The new human was smaller, different. But she moved carefully and kept her body language non-threatening. Daeho introduced Jiwoo using gestures and simple words. He pointed to her. "Jiwoo, friend, human, good." Silva tilted her head. She made her name sound again. Jiwoo tried to repeat it and also failed. But like Daeho, she tried to say the simplified version. "Silva." The dragon leader seemed pleased. She lowered her head toward Jiwoo. It was a gesture of greeting. Jiwoo slowly bowed in return. Her hands trembled, but her voice was steady. "It is an honor to meet you," Jiwoo said quietly. Perhaps Silva did not understand the words, but she understood the tone, the respect, the wonder. She made a low, warm sound in response. Hanul, the small silver dragon, approached Jiwoo curiously. The hatchling sniffed her boots. Then it looked up at her with bright eyes. It chirped happily. Jiwoo slowly knelt down and extended her hand. Hanul rubbed against her palm and purred. "They are beautiful," Jiwoo whispered. Tears formed in her eyes. "They are people, Daeho. Not animals, people." "I know," Daeho said. "That is why we must be careful." This moment. The visits became regular. Every day at dawn, the dragons would arrive. Sometimes the whole pack came. Sometimes just Silva and a few others. But the 3 hatchlings always came. Hanul, Bora, and Dal grew attached to Daeho and Jiwoo. The small dragons refused to stay away. The main research station learned about the contact. Dr. Park arrived on the 5th day with a full team. She brought linguists, biologists, and diplomats. Everyone wanted to study the dragons. Everyone wanted to be part of this historic moment. But Silva would not allow a large group near her pack. When she saw the crowd of humans arriving, she became aggressive. Her scales rose. Her wings spread wide. She roared a warning that shook the ice. Dr. Park wisely stopped her team far away. Only she approached, walking alone across the ice field. She kept her hands raised and moved slowly. Daeho and Jiwoo met her halfway and explained the situation. "The dragons are intelligent but cautious," Daeho said. "They trust Jiwoo and me because we showed them respect first. We did not treat them like animals to study. We treated them like people to know." Dr. Park understood. She was a good scientist and a good leader. She sent most of her team back to the main station. Only 3 people stayed. Herself, a linguist named Hyojin, and a cultural specialist named Minseo. They would work carefully and slowly. Hyojin was young and brilliant. She had studied alien languages across 12 different star systems. She specialized in nonverbal communication. When she saw the dragons, her eyes filled with tears of joy. This was her life's dream. Minseo was older and patient. He had worked with dozens of alien cultures. He understood that building relationships took time. He carried no recording equipment. He brought no weapons. He carried only his knowledge and his open mind. The dragons watched these new humans carefully. Silva focused on Dr. Park. The 2 leaders studied each other. Both were old. Both were wise. Both carried the weight of their people's future. Dr. Park bowed deeply. She spoke in Korean, knowing the dragons could not understand words yet. But tone mattered. Respect mattered. Great leader of the dragon people, thank you for allowing us into your presence. We come in peace and friendship. We hope to learn from you and share knowledge with you. Hyojin translated the bow and tone into gestures. She had studied dragon body language from Jiwoo's recordings. She tried to mirror the way Silva moved her head and wings. Silva watched with interest. She responded with her own complex movements. Hyojin recorded everything with her eyes and memory. She would spend hours analyzing each gesture later. The hatchlings broke the tension. They did not understand politics or diplomacy. They only knew that the new humans seemed kind. Hanul approached Dr. Park curiously. The small dragon sniffed her clothes and made a questioning sound. Dr. Park slowly knelt down. She extended her hand carefully. Hanul sniffed her palm. Then the small dragon rubbed its head against her hand and purred. Dr. Park smiled. Her eyes grew wet. "Hello, little one," she whispered. "Are you one of the babies that Daeho saved?" Hanul seemed to sense her kindness. The small dragon climbed into her lap. Bora and Dao followed their sibling. Soon all three hatchlings were playing around Dr. Park. They tugged on her clothes. They investigated her equipment pouches. They chirped and purred. Silva watched this interaction closely. Her posture relaxed. If her hatchlings felt safe with this human, then perhaps this human could be trusted. Over the following weeks, communication improved. Hyojin worked tirelessly to create a basic translation system. She identified over 50 distinct dragon sounds. Each sound had different meanings depending on tone, volume, and body language. It was incredibly complex, but patterns emerged. Dragons used different sounds for greetings, warnings, questions, and agreements. They used wing positions to show emotions. They used tail movements to indicate direction and intention. Their language was as rich and complex as any human language. Hyojin created a basic dictionary. She taught it to Daeho, Jiwoo, Minseo, and Dr. Park. They practiced daily. The dragons seemed amused by human attempts to speak their language. But they appreciated the effort. Taesung became the most interested in human technology. The young male dragon spent hours watching humans work with their equipment. He learned to recognize tools. He understood that humans use devices to extend their abilities, just as dragons use their natural gifts. One day, Taesung picked up a dropped wrench in his claws. He examined it carefully. Then he tried to use it to tighten a loose bolt on a storage container. The bolt was too small for his large claws. He struggled for several minutes. Then he made a frustrated sound. Daeho gently took the wrench and demonstrated. He tightened the bolt. Then he showed Taesung how human hands were better suited for small, delicate work. Taesung watched intently. He made sounds that Hyojin translated as understanding and curiosity. The dragon gestured to his own wings. He flapped them powerfully. The wind nearly knocked Daeho over. Taesung made more sounds. Hyojin translated. He is saying that dragons can fly and carry heavy things. He is showing that dragons and humans have different strengths. He thinks we can help each other. This was a breakthrough moment. The dragons understood cooperation. They understood mutual benefit. This was not just friendship. This was the beginning of partnership. The hatchlings grew rapidly. Within 3 weeks, they doubled in size. Their scales hardened. Their wings grew stronger. They began learning to fly. But they still followed Daeho and Jiwoo everywhere. They slept near the human shelters. They played with human tools. They were becoming something new. A bridge between species. Hanul remained the most attached to Daeho. The small silver dragon would cry if separated from him for too long. When Daeho worked, Hanul would curl up nearby and watch. When Daeho slept, Hanul would sleep outside his shelter door. The bond between them grew stronger every day. Silva noticed this bond. She discussed it with her pack. Dragons had strong family structures. Hatchlings bonded with their parents and pack. But Hanul had bonded with a human. This was unprecedented. This was strange. But Silva was wise enough to see the potential. What if dragons and humans could form family bonds? What if the two species could become closer than just allies? What if they could become kin? Silva made a decision. She called Daeho to meet with her privately. Jiwoo and Hyojin came as translators. The old dragon leader spoke for several minutes. Hyojin translated carefully. Silva says that Hanul has chosen you as a second parent. In dragon culture, this is a great honor, but also a great responsibility. She asks if you will accept this bond. If you do, you will be considered part of the Dragon Pack. You will have duties to protect and teach Hanul, but you will also have the full support and friendship of all dragons in the pack. Daeho felt overwhelmed. He looked at small Hanul, who watched him with bright, hopeful eyes. He thought about the responsibility. He thought about what this meant for human-dragon relations. He thought about the future. Then he looked into Silva's golden eyes. He saw wisdom there. He saw trust. He saw hope for something better than the loneliness and separation between species. "I accept," Daeho said. His voice was firm. "I will care for Hanul as my own child. I will protect, teach, and love this dragon with all my heart," Hyojin translated. Silva's eyes brightened. She made a deep musical sound. The other dragons responded with their own calls. It was clearly a ceremony, a ritual. They were witnessing something important. Silva approached Daeho. She lowered her massive head until it touched his chest. It was gentle despite her size. She made soft sounds. Hyojin's voice shook as she translated. She says, "You are now Pack. You are Dragon Friend. You are Hanul's Sky Parent. You will be honored among all dragons. Your name will be remembered in their songs." Hanul rushed forward and climbed onto Daeho. The young dragon wrapped around him and purred loudly. Daeho held the dragon close. Tears ran down his face. He had not planned this. He had just wanted to save 3 freezing babies during a storm. But that simple act of kindness had led to this moment. Jiwoo also cried. She recorded everything with shaking hands. Dr. Park and Min Seo stood respectfully at a distance. They understood they were witnessing history. The first formal bond between a human and a dragon. The first true family connection between species. In the following days, more bonds formed. Jiwoo was accepted as Sky Parent to Bora. Min Seo, who had shown endless patience and respect, was accepted as Sky Parent to Dal. The 3 humans became part of the Dragon Pack. They learned dragon customs. They participated in dragon gatherings. They were family. The dragons also learned human customs. They came to human celebrations. They tried human food. Some of it made them sick, but they appreciated the gesture. They learned human games. They were terrible at cards, but enjoyed the laughter. Taesung became fascinated with human art. Hyojin showed him paintings and music recordings. The dragon discovered he could create beautiful patterns in ice and snow using his breath and claws. He began making art. Humans and dragons would sit together and watch him work. It was meditation. It was beauty. It was shared culture. News of the human-dragon bond spread across the galaxy. Other human colonies heard about it. Other alien species heard about it. Some were skeptical. Some were curious. Some were inspired. Representatives from other worlds asked to visit Velkaris. They wanted to see the miracle for themselves. 6 months passed since the first encounter. Velkaris transformed from a lonely research outpost into a symbol of hope. Humans and dragons worked together daily. They built shared spaces where both species could live comfortably. They created communication centers where language could be taught and learned. They formed councils where decisions affecting both peoples could be discussed and agreed upon. Hanul was now the size of a large horse. The young dragon's scales shimmered like liquid mercury. Wings that had once been tiny and useless could now carry the dragon across vast distances. But despite this growth and power, Hanul remained devoted to Daeho. Every morning began with the dragon greeting its sky parent. Every evening ended with them watching stars together. Daeho had changed too. He was no longer just a weather technician working in isolation. He was now Ambassador Daeho, officially recognized by both human government and Dragon Pack as a bridge between worlds. He wore the title uncomfortably. He preferred being called simply a friend, but the galaxy did not always understand friendship. Trouble came from an unexpected direction. A human mining corporation called Stellar Resources arrived in the Velkari system. They had rights to mine the asteroid belt. These rights were granted before anyone knew dragons lived in the system. The corporation demanded access to resources. They wanted to begin operations immediately. The problem was clear. The asteroid belt contained minerals that dragons used for their nests. The mining would destroy resources the dragons needed. It would also bring hundreds of workers, ships, and machines into dragon territory. The delicate peace could shatter. Dr. Park, now Governor Park of the Velkaris colony, tried to negotiate. She contacted Stellar Resources and explained the situation. She asked them to delay their operations until proper agreements could be made with the Dragon Pack. The corporation refused. They had legal rights. They had invested billions of credits. They would not delay for anyone, especially not for animals. The corporate representative said this during a transmission. He called the dragons animals. Silva heard the translation. Her eyes turned cold. Taesung and other younger dragons wanted to attack the corporation ships. They wanted to drive the humans away by force. The pack was divided. Some dragons argued that this proved humans could not be trusted. Others, like Silva, wanted to give the good humans a chance to fix the problem. Daeho, Jiwoo, and Hyojin worked frantically. They contacted human representatives across multiple star systems. They sent recordings of humans and dragons living together. They showed the bonds that had formed. They argued that profit should not destroy the first peaceful relationship between humans and another intelligent species. Many humans agreed. Many were inspired by the story of Velkaris. But corporations had power. Stellar Resources had lawyers. They had contracts. They had rights that were difficult to challenge. The situation grew tense. Stellar Resources sent their first mining ship toward the asteroid belt. The dragons intercepted it. Dozens of dragons surrounded the ship. They did not attack, but their message was clear. Come closer and there would be war. The mining ship retreated. But Stellar Resources sent more ships. Larger ships. Ships with weapons for protection. They claimed they had a right to defend themselves against hostile aliens. Governor Park declared a system emergency. She contacted the central human government and requested military support, not to attack the dragons, not to help the corporation, but to maintain peace, to prevent violence from either side. The military sent Commander Yunho, a wise and experienced officer. He arrived with 3 ships but made clear they would not take sides. They would only prevent bloodshed. He met with Governor Park first. Then he asked to meet with the dragon leaders. Silva agreed to meet. The encounter happened on neutral ground, an ice field between the human colony and the dragon nesting grounds. Silva brought her pack leaders. Commander Yunho brought only himself and 2 guards. Daeho and Hyojin acted as translators. Commander Yunho bowed deeply to Silva. Great leader, I come with respect. I do not represent the corporation. I represent human government. We acknowledge the wrong that is being done. We ask for your patience while we find a solution. Hyojin translated carefully. Silva listened. Then she spoke. Hyojin translated her words. Your corporations do not listen to your governments. Your laws protect those with money over those with need. Why should we trust human promises? You say we are intelligent people, yet your laws treat us as obstacles to profit. Commander Yunho nodded slowly. You speak truth that shames us. Our systems are imperfect, but many humans fight for justice. Many humans believe your friendship is more valuable than any mineral. Give us time to prove this. Silva looked at Daeho, the young human who had saved her hatchlings, who had become family to her pack. She looked at Jiwoo and Hyojin. She looked at Governor Park standing nearby. These humans had shown honor and love, but one good human did not erase the threat of greedy humans. How much time? Silva asked through gestures and sounds. 1 moon cycle, Commander Yunho said. Give us 30 days. If we cannot resolve this, then I will not stop you from defending your home. I give you my word as a soldier. This was a serious promise. Commander Yunho was putting his honor on the line. Silva recognized this. She discussed with her pack leaders in quick, complex dragon language. Then she turned back to the commander. 30 days, Hyojin translated. But if your people attack our nests or our young ones, we will respond immediately. And we will remember which humans stood with us and which stood against us. Commander Yunho accepted these terms. The meeting ended. But the clock was now ticking. What happened next surprised everyone. The story of Velkaris had been spreading through human space for months. When people learned that a corporation threatened to destroy this peaceful relationship, they became angry. Very angry. Social media exploded with outrage. People shared videos of Daeho and Hanul together. They shared images of human children playing with dragon hatchlings. They shared recordings of Silva speaking about peace and friendship. The message was clear. Stellar Resources was the villain in this story. The corporation's stock prices fell. Their investors threatened to pull funding. Their customers boycotted their products. The public pressure was enormous. But corporate leaders were stubborn. They insisted they had done nothing wrong. They had legal rights. Then scientists made an announcement. They had been studying the minerals in the asteroid belt. These minerals were indeed rare and valuable, but they discovered something more important. The minerals contained unique biological compounds. Dragons use these compounds in their nests. The compounds help dragon eggs develop properly. Without them, dragon reproduction would fail. Taking the minerals was not just stealing resources. It was threatening the dragon species with slow extinction. This information changed everything. Even the most profit-focused humans understood the line that could not be crossed. Destroying an intelligent species for mining profits was not just immoral. It was genocide. The central human government acted quickly. They suspended stellar resources mining rights. They opened investigations into the corporation's practices. They passed emergency laws protecting dragon nesting resources. The corporation fought back with lawyers, but they had already lost in the court of public opinion. Daiho brought the news to Silva personally. Hanel flew beside him, carrying him on the young dragon's back. They landed in the dragon nesting grounds. The entire pack gathered to hear. Daiho spoke through Hyojin's translation device, which had improved greatly over the months. The mining has been stopped. Your nesting resources are protected. Human law now recognizes dragon rights to these materials. The corporation that threatened you is being punished. This happened because millions of humans spoke up for justice. They spoke up for you. Silva listened. Then she spoke. Her words were translated for the humans listening through communication devices. We acknowledge that not all humans are the same. Some seek only profit. Some seek friendship. We have learned to tell the difference. We are grateful to those who fought for us. We remember their names. We will honor their kindness in our songs for generations. She approached Daiho, the young human who had started everything by refusing to let 3 hatchlings freeze to death. She touched his shoulder gently with her massive claw. You showed us what humans could be. You showed us compassion without expecting reward. You showed us that different peoples can become family. This is a gift beyond price, Hanil nuzzled against Daiho. The bond between them had become legendary across human space and beyond. Other alien species watched with interest. If humans and dragons could build such friendship, perhaps other relationships were possible. Perhaps the galaxy did not need to be divided by fear and suspicion. In the months that followed, formal treaties were signed. The Velkari's Accords established rules for human-dragon cooperation. Dragons would teach humans about their culture, history, and knowledge of the galaxy. Humans would share technology and help dragons explore new worlds. Joint programs were created. Young humans and young dragons trained together. They learned each other's languages. They studied together. They played together. A new GE,